Alright, so this question reads, each of exactly 7 professors, P, S, T, V, W, Y, and Z, gives exactly one guest lecture in the literary theory course. The lectures are ordered from 1st through 7th, and their order must conform to the following. Alright, so we have our inventory. We have our 7 professors, P, S, T, V, W, Y, and Z. And we're going to order them 1st through 7th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, let's go to the rules. Rule number 1, Powell lectures before would. Okay, so we have P before W, which means W is not first and P is not last. Rule number 2, Taylor lectures before Shahab. So we have T before S. So S can't be first and T can't be last. Now, rule number 3, V lectures before Z. So we have V before Z. That means Z is not first and V is not last. Rule number 4, S is no later than third. So that means that S is going to be either first or second or third. But remember, we made the deduction that S is not first from rule number 2 because T is before S. So that means that S is going to be either second or third. So S is not 4th or 5th or 6th or 7th. Rule number 5, Young is not 7th. So we know Young is not 7th. And rule number 6, P lectures first if, but only if, Young lectures before Vaughn. So remember, if but only if is a double arrow. We have P lectures first, double arrow, Young lectures before Vaughn. We can write our contrapositive if P is not first, and since this is a double arrow, it doesn't matter if we're switching it because the double arrow switches it for us anyways, then V is before Y. Now, rule number 6 is really important because it gives us 2 options of P either being first or P not being first. So if P is first, then we know that Y is going to be before V. We can attach that to rule number 3. We know that V is before Z. So in this scenario, let's write it out. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have P first. We know that Z has Y and V before it, so Z can't be second and Z can't be third. Likewise, Y can't be 7th, Y can't be 6th. V can't be second and V can't be 7th because it has Y before it and Z after it. We know from rule number 2 that S can't be second because T is before it. Likewise, T can't be 7th because S is after it. Rule number 4, remember, tells us that S is either second or third. Well, we know that S can't be second because T is before it, so that means S must be third, and that places T second. And so we're left with Y, V, Z, and W. Well, we know 7th can't be Y or V, so it's going to be either Z or W. And we know 4th can't be Z because Z has Y and V before it, meaning Z can't be 5th either. V can't be 4th because Y must be before V. So that means 4th is going to be either Y or W. And then 5th and 6th can be either Y, V, W, or Z, depending on where the rest go. So this is our option if P is first. Now, what if P is not first? So if P is not first, then we know that V is before Y, but rule number 3 tells us that V is also before Z, so V is going to be before Z and Y in this scenario. So we know P is not first. Now, our second most restrictive rule after rule number 6 is probably rule number 4 because it tells us that S is going to be either second or third. So let's write out those options of S being second or third when P is not first. So we can have S being second, and then S being third. So if S is second, that places T first because T has to be before it. And if S is third, T is either first or second. So let's place T first here and T second here. So in our last option, we know we can't have Z first or Y first because V is before them. We know we can't have W first because P is before W. And we know that P isn't first. So that leaves V. So we know V is first here. In our second scenario, let's determine who the second professor is. So we know it can't be 0Y because V is before Z and Y, and it can't be W because P is before W. So that means we have either V or P. And likewise, we're in the same scenario for the third professor in this first option, V or P. So those are the only things we can fill out in the second option where P is not first. Remember, these two options we've written out are based off of rule number 6. And the only other thing we can really fill out is looking at the setup, we see that the last professor can't be P, T, V, S, or Y. So that leaves the last spot open to either W or Z. All right, so those are our rules, setup, and deductions. Let's go ahead and hit the questions.